Hi everyone, welcome to the Stay Hungry podcast. Today it's Joel and Georgia. Let's go. G, how you doing?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. Feeling very fancy with this new equipment.
You've not been on the new setup, have you?
No, I haven't. Last time it was just that little device we plugged in our phone.
Yeah.
Now we're a big deal.
And you haven't had the theme music before. I can't help, like sometimes I just want to press the theme music all the time. I can't. So today we're going to be talking about women in marketing and women in business loosely, but women in marketing.
Yep.
Because you're a woman in marketing.
That is true. Let's hope I know something. Let's hope I can provide some value to this podcast.
Yeah, well, yeah. Strangely, in Shropshire, marketing's quite a male-dominated field, but I'm not sure that's the case nationwide.
It's certainly changing. I've seen a lot of it. It started off that it used to be quite male-dominated because it's quite a bold field, and so I've seen kind of a lot of articles and women that I follow talk about it, saying they feel a lot more comfortable in the marketing world now that they're able to use their voice and find their voice and creativity. But I think for a while it was more male dominated, more of a confidence issue. It seemed to be. Yeah,
maybe, and opportunities perhaps. So what's your role at Codebreak? Here we go. Wait for this.
Officially, it is now creative manager as of 9:30 this morning.
Yeah.
Whoop.
I need like a round of applause sound effect.
like audience. So that's very exciting. Got my promotion today.
There you go.
Boom. Very excited about that. And that obviously comes with making sure the creative side of Codebreak is kick-ass. And that's down to me as a woman. So that's exciting.
As a woman, is that why? Yeah, I remember now. No, interested. So what was your role before and how have you got to this point? And, where have you come from?
So I was, way back before, I was freelance as I was travelling.
Mm-hmm.
And I did bits kind of all over the world. I did for a magazine in Australia. I did some bits in New York and then people kind of in Shropshire, funnily enough. And then I think I met you at a networking event at Chadstone's Thirsty Thursday. And it seemed to go really well, which is lucky because I think I'd had a couple of gins at that point.
Probably.
But it seemed to go well, and then kind of spoke to you and Andy, went from there. Started off as digital marketing executive here at Codebreak, and kind of you gave me kind of freedom to run with the creativity, and I ran really as hard as I possibly could, and luckily it's gone well and been able to prove to you guys that I can bring stuff to the table.
I think that's a very fair summary of what's gone on. Certainly, I met you and in all fairness, so I know your dad.
Yeah.
But I didn't know who you were when I met you.
Yeah.
So the impression I got of you wasn't, oh, that's Rob's daughter.
Yeah.
It was, this is Georgia.
Yeah.
Oh, who the bloody hell's Georgia, sort of thing. And you made a really strong impression on me, and just very confident. You spoke to me like a friend straight away, I think is how I'd describe it. And I'm a little bit of a nervous networker. I'm much better after a couple of beers than I am before. Yeah. And it's just quite nice to show up at an event and someone start talking to you. Yeah. And it made an impression. And I mentioned it to Andy when I came back to the office, and he was like, oh, Emma knows Georgia, Andy's wife, and speaks really highly of her. And then the seed was sown, sort of thing. So then when we had a position come up, it was like, oh, let's get Georgia in. And you interviewed against a few other people, but I think we picked the right one. And from my perspective, nothing to do with whether you were male or female or whatever your situation is. Mm-hmm. But certainly it's interesting in our team. So currently in our office, day to day, there's 3 blokes, 3 women.
Yeah.
It's quite a nice balance, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of what sprung this podcast is I did a podcast with somebody else last week who's very much about female empowerment and women's voice in industry and on social media and all that thing. Mm-hmm. And we had a little conversation about you, actually, about how I'd sent you a few links to women who were doing very, very well on social media and had something for you to look at and sort of dissect a little bit and see what you could do with your voice.
Yeah.
And then as it panned out, one of these people, maybe 2, but definitely one, started to wear less and less in their LinkedIn content.
Yeah. I remember like saying to you a bit concerned, like, what's the angle here? Like,
Yeah.
What are Codebreak trying to achieve?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've pretty much felt embarrassed and horrified about that ever since, because, and in all fairness, I can prove it. If you scroll back, they didn't do that before.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, God, I've got an impressionable member of staff and she thinks I want her to just like flaunt herself for the brand. And it really struck with me quite hard, because I'm not a woman.
Yeah.
I've got a wife.
Yeah.
And she's quite a strong individual, in a reasonable job, and very much has her own voice and isn't intimidated by men or the corporate world or anything. But having spoken to her about it as well, she was like, well, yeah, what did you think they were going to think if you were sending them links to these women who, I don't know, are flaunting more than their professional skill set, let's say.
Yeah.
And I've felt gutted ever since.
Yeah.
And thought it'd be an interesting thing to talk about today in terms of what your angle on it is, because I'm talking a lot here, and really I shouldn't be the voice on this podcast, so it'll be over to you in a second. So, from my perspective, there's a line between a woman using her femininity to, a woman using her femininity versus a woman using her sexuality, I guess is the line.
Right.
Because why shouldn't a woman use her femininity or masculinity if she wants? And over to you before I make a dick of myself.
I think the difficulty I found is when it starts becoming less about her knowledge.
Yeah.
So for the particular people kind of on LinkedIn that I'd seen, they started off being absolutely awesome, like so cool to follow, great ideas, great inspiration, and you just one of the like women that you just like, you are taking charge, you're setting a new path.
Yeah.
And then attention started to come in, first of all, based off of their knowledge, and then when it was seen that certain things perform better based on their appearance, and then the videos and the content almost changed around how they looked as opposed to what they can bring to the table. And that's when it gets frustrating, because great, you look great on camera, fine, no one's saying wear anything different,
doesn't
wear
matter
what you want,
you're
like
male or female,
absolutely, whoever you are, all power to you, rock it, but don't let that be the star of the show.
Don't let it define you.
Like your knowledge is the star of the show. And the problem, so I found on LinkedIn, I mean, I'm still fairly new to the world of LinkedIn, and I've only ever been on in our kind of uniform and our cool merch, and I've still had messages that have come through to me, and like from guys that kind of in the businessy world that are just inappropriate. And I know when you were on the podcast last week and you spoke, that's quite a common thing, and having spoken to other people, that's a common thing, and we've kind of spoken to you guys in the office about whether that's the same in reverse.
Yeah, because strangely my messages aren't full of weird messages. There's no women out there sending me strange messages, so
so it's one of those of, why is that happening? Why is that still seen to be okay? And it's never okay. And even if, you go on as, is it the Canadian weather woman, like that whole funny thing?
Oh, yeah.
Like even if I went on doing a marketing video like that, it doesn't warrant those messages.
Yeah, agreed.
And that's the thing. That's the problem. Is it? So it's not that I'm coming on here and saying, if you've got knowledge, don't go on dressed
as you want to dress.
Yeah, do what you want to do. Just let your knowledge be the voice, not your appearance, because that's the awesome thing. Yeah.
So, okay, talk me through that then. So, let's spin it. A good-looking bloke wears a tightly fitted shirt to record his marketing videos.
Yeah.
Are we all right with that?
Yeah.
A good-looking bloke opens his marketing video with, "What do you think of my shirt, people?"
That's when it starts to become a bit. I mean, unless it is very much, it's a cool spin on, how can I sell you this shirt as a marketer? But if it is just a case of trying to draw attention to that, again, the same opinion as goes to anybody is, if you have a point about that shirt that is relevant to your knowledge and that is going to be helpful and provide something beneficial to your audience, great. If not, be quiet.
Okay. So, as an employer, obviously I employ 3 very strong-willed women within the business. there's other strong-willed women involved in the business.
Yeah.
And I'd say all of those characters would be horrified if they thought we were taking advantage of the fact that you were women, or
100%.
that you as individuals were being inappropriate, I guess. So where's the line? How do we... Because I have got no intention of stifling any of your creativity or confidence. If you guys feel like you look good on camera, I can't step in there.
That's where I think it is down to the individual. And because some people, again, regardless of your gender or anything, you feel more comfortable if you've got like less on or tighter fitted, or being in front of a camera, delivering content, trying to put your ideas across. You need to feel confident in what you're doing, what you're saying, how you look. So whatever that means for you, roll with that. If at any point you are doing something that does not feels outside of your comfort zone, especially if you're the employee and an employer is pushing that, then that's when it's a problem.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting marketing tip for employers, isn't it? Is to find the characters that will bring the most value to your content. Yeah. But let them run with how they want to appear.
Absolutely.
Because if you're steering the visual, you're opening yourself up to some tricky conversations down the line. Particularly with, we've got quite young people working here. Yeah. Impressionable. Yeah. If I said, well, you need to have your hair this way. Yeah. And unless it was for a technical reason, like your hair's in your face, or
it's going to get eaten up by
that's a tricky situation to manage, but also really important from tips and advice for businesses creating content, that they're aware of that, male or female, in front of the camera.
Absolutely. In terms of creative direction, and this is something obviously I will be exploring more with this new role with the team here, is this is what we're going for. This is the vision we're trying to create. Run with it. And the only kind of rules in that is respecting the client, the brand, kind of depending on your industry, wherever you are, is making sure that you're looking after that sense of it in terms of guidelines. Yeah. But anything else, like, that's where the creativity comes from. Yeah, yeah. So with, say, risky brands. Yeah. So there's brands out there that push the boundaries. Yeah. Brands that we've worked with that push the boundaries, but certainly I'm trying to think of one, like, I don't know, maybe like an energy drink. Yeah. So without naming names. Yeah. They might do things that skirt the edges of okay. Mm-hmm. I guess then you've just got to make sure you're checking with the individuals that this is what they signed up for. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. It's a case of open communication. And I think it's certainly in where I stand as a woman in business, and especially in a field that has been male dominated and is now moving towards being on a much more equal footing, is complete transparency. Like, if you ask me to do something, if you genuinely don't see it as a problem, then we should be able to talk about it. And if I do see it as a problem, I should be able to say, actually, Joel, that makes me feel quite uncomfortable, and we can have that conversation. Yeah. And it's totally fine. It's when you feel like you can't have that conversation that there's a problem. Because sometimes you just might not see it that way. For example, if that LinkedIn, if you hadn't have seen it the way you had with those people, and I'd have been like, oh God, like, what does he want me to do?
Well, you raised that with me. You raised that with me. So I'm glad you could.
Yeah, exactly. But if I hadn't have been able to, and that's where the problem is, like, I should be able to say to you, like, what the hell? Like, I'm not okay with that. And you'd be like, yeah, of course, I didn't even see it that way. Yeah. And that's not, and that's where it can be difficult, because it's very easy to blame and be like, well, that's your ignorance, but it's not. It's more of an education thing of, you've not had to deal with that from messages from women, so how would you know?
And literally, like, I was just like, I'm going to find some inspiring people on LinkedIn and send them your way. 100%. No idea that two of them were going to start taking their clothes off. Yeah. It just didn't have. It was like, oh, bollocks. Yeah.
This isn't what I thought. Yeah. 100%. Hey, it's Georgia at Codebreak. Thanks for listening to the Stay Hungry podcast. If you're hungry for more, don't forget to check out all the free marketing content on codebreak.co.uk.
I didn't know I was going to press your ad then. That was freaky.
Yeah, that was weird.
could hear yourself.
Yeah, didn't know how I feel about that.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Things you need to check before you... So, okay, where are we going with this then? So, what's your journey been like? What, in terms of building your career? Because you're very career-driven compared to most people,
Yeah.
I'd say. Then you probably come across things that perhaps myself as a bloke haven't.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've had conversations when I first started using LinkedIn. I was very against it, just in terms of messages I'd received.
Yeah.
And I remember having the conversation with you of, I know this is an awesome platform and I know that I can do awesome things with it, but at the moment I'm just kind of hitting that wall. And it was only when I then went and found cool people and inspiring women that do things based on purely on their content that I started to realize, okay, this is a great platform to use. But for a while I was very hesitant about it. And you know, having spoken to other women in this field and just women in business in general, it can be it's there are difficult times. Like networking before has been difficult.
Really?
Yeah. So like I've had kind of networking before where people have come over and instead of a handshake they'll go straight in for a hug, which is just
I didn't do that, so I'm in for a win here. That's
which
good.
Is just that
is bizarre.
Very bizarre. Like, and because you just wouldn't do it. You would not walk into a room and go and hug another man in the room. You wouldn't hug another woman either, I don't think. But
No.
It's inappropriate to have that. Like, why is that? We need that kind of mindset shift of, well, why would you not shake my hand? Why am I any different? And to the extremes I've also had where it's been a hug and then like tried to do a kiss and a kiss on the cheek, which, I mean, I don't even do that with some family members, let alone at a networking event.
So I have gone through that. I've had women that have kissed me on the cheek as a greeting.
Uh-huh.
And I find that uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Partly because I'm a bit shy underneath it all. But I never know where the personal boundaries are in that sense. Not on a male or female thing. Just like, and equally, I won't name his name, but there is a guy who I meet at networking who always hugs me, always hugs me, and I'm not sure I'm all right with that either. And I quite like a hug, but I'm just like, okay, so but it's not about me. Carry on.
Yeah. So I think there are kind of aspects of it. I've been in jobs before where I've stood up to kind of do a board meeting and the eyes have not been on the board. And it's meant I've very much changed how I dress and things like that for work, which I don't think...
I see what you mean there.
Yeah,
right.
It shouldn't have to be a thing. And, you know, comments were made in the room. Obviously, I won't mention where it was, but by members of staff that are in high up positions. And that's just not okay. And having spoken to my male friends, they're like, never has that happened to me in the history of ever. And that's not right. And it's one of those that it is changing, but there's always going to be things. But I think kind of bringing it back to business and in marketing, it's just a case of knowing your voice, knowing your boundaries. And if at any point anything is overstepped in that, be that in your work or, you know, with the relationships that you have with the people that you work with, you're able to speak up about it.
Yeah, if you can't have a chat with your boss about it in an open forum, then you're not working in the right place.
Definitely not.
And that's a fairly modern, a fairly contemporary thing. I know even 5 years ago that probably wasn't the case. It wasn't that easy to just speak to your boss and say, I think this overstepped the mark, or I'd rather not follow this person on LinkedIn anymore. Or, you know, I'd rather we all just wore uniform because then it takes away any grey areas because I feel like so-and-so got promoted because they wear less clothes than me or...
Whatever it may be,
Yeah, okay. So then in terms of marketing, like what's it like to be a young woman in what's quite an aggressive competitive field?
I quite like it because I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
The part I don't like is that opportunity is not always used in the best way, and does also feel like no matter what you put out, sometimes comments are made about appearance. Or so there's a couple of women that I follow on LinkedIn that are, you know, very, very similar to me in kind of how they dress and the way that they talk, and still on their videos it's a comment on what they wore or how their hair is and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those that, again, as I said, that you keep kind of going with it, and you just keep going, well, I'm going to ignore that, and I'm going to keep putting out my awesome content and my great ideas. And so I do very much, if anything, I allow it to fuel me, because I just think, well, I'm better at it than you.
Determined to prove myself.
And that is what I would say to anybody, any young women in this industry as well, is now is your perfect opportunity to showcase your creativity and your boldness and your voice, and it be purely based on your skill and your ability. Like, that's so exciting. And it can be easy to be kind of pulled down by that, but it's going to be there. It's changing, but it's going to be there. So instead, don't let that define your career and how you behave professionally.
So I'm going to say something, it might be controversial, it might not.
Yeah.
But so obviously the 3 women in our team,
Yeah.
at no point have we, other than merch, which I think everyone was into, have we ever defined what's appropriate to wear, other than like, don't wear flip-flops to work or something. And I think it's really important, young men, young women in business, that although your appearance and your masculinity, femininity, sexuality, whatever, it shouldn't define you in terms of your career. Yeah. You shouldn't be afraid to be you either.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's such a tricky thing to express. If you want to wear revealing clothes, as long as you're appropriate. Yeah. If you want to wear revealing clothes, or you want to wear a tight fitted shirt, or if you want to show your tattoos or your piercings, or you wear funny coloured contact lenses, whatever it might be, it's up to you to rock that a little bit. Yeah. You kind of got to like be comfortable in your own skin, and that, you know, when I was your age, and that makes me feel so old to say that, I wasn't comfortable in my own skin because I couldn't. It was really hard to find yourself. It's you know, particularly in a competitive career. But that would be my advice to anyone: is it's not about not being you. Yeah. It's about being you, but being the best version of you, and being known for your expertise and the amazing things that you do. And if so happens that you dress like a rock star, absolutely, that's absolutely fine. Yeah. But you're not defined by the fact that you dress like a rock star. Yeah, and 100%. I find that's a really tricky. I'd find that hard to explain to our apprentice. Yeah,
it's hard to explain. It's hard to implement. It can be very tricky to kind of come across how you want to come across in your content, which is why, again, it's very individual, but also kind of go with your gut on a lot of things, because when you're putting things out there, you can judge the tone, like, oh, this doesn't really feel like me. This feels like I'm having to try. And that's not necessarily in how you look. It could be something you're talking about that you may not feel comfortable with or anything. So it's always kind of bringing it back to, does this align with where I'm at? And if it does, run with it. If it doesn't, make the tweaks.
Yeah, and I think, like, we're fortunate at Codebreak, we have company values. Yeah. So chances are, knowing you're the sort of personality, if you disagreed with our values, you probably wouldn't work here.
Yeah, 100%.
So as long as that alignment's in place in terms of the company you're working for and the company you're representing in your content, you need to believe in what you're saying and doing for it to make sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, and for you to do it well, because you can't fake that. You can't in kind of any job. You know, you could maybe do it for a while, but eventually it will start to suck the soul out of you. So it's got to be something you're fully behind.
Yeah.
Hey there, Evie at Codebreak here. Fancy top tips, marketing insights and awesomeness delivered directly to you? Sign up for the free Stay Hungry printed newsletter at codebreak.co.uk.
We're back.
So,
if you were starting in the industry tomorrow, what would be your 3 tips for, well, let's say your 3 tips for a woman starting in the industry, and then just let's have a 4th tip for anybody.
Okay. So first off, I'd be stop apologising. And this is something I need to be better at. But it just seems to be like our initial response is, oh, I'm sorry, could you just check this? Or I'm sorry, how about that? Or just go for it. Like, unless you've actually done something wrong, stop saying sorry.
Yeah.
Be comfortable with your ideas would be the second one. As in, if you think that's a good idea, run with it. And you might sometimes get backlash.
Yeah.
But if you fully believe in that, you're able to go, well, actually, I think it's a good idea because of X, Y, and Z. And kind of having that devil's advocate within the office or the business is healthy anyway.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to go with that. And then I think the third one would be to honestly trust your knowledge. Like, it's so easy to, especially in something like marketing where so many people claim they know how to do it, or so many people are top marketers, like, have the belief in yourself that your knowledge is good and you know what you're doing. And regardless of whether you are male or female, but especially like being a woman in this industry, just go for it, because I guarantee you've got it. Like,
yeah. So something I have noticed in life, and it's a sexist comment, but I would say not against women. I'd say women are generally a little bit more empathetic than men.
Yeah.
Because empathy isn't a personality trait that's encouraged in men.
Yeah.
Until recently, it wasn't like put your arm around someone and check they're okay. That wasn't what men do, which they should.
Absolutely, they should. Yeah, I'm glad that's starting to change slowly. Yeah.
But from a business owner's perspective, that is such an asset in a female team.
Absolutely.
For like you, when you're briefing a client, to find out what it is that they actually want.
Yeah.
Because what they say they want and what they actually want are very different.
Absolutely.
And in marketing, that would be, usually they say, oh, we want more inquiries or more sales.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
What you actually want, and I talk about this on my video, this one, what you actually want is to pay your mortgage off quicker.
Yeah.
Or you want to spend more time with your kids, or you want a fancier car, or, you want a bigger garden. And then because of that, we can feed into our clients, oh, and by the way, that'll mean you're X many weeks closer to paying off your mortgage.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you reached 32,000 people on Facebook this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's something I've really, really noticed, and I've seen female-led marketing teams do that really well, where they understand what makes someone tick, and therefore all of the data that's fed back is around the kind of requirements of that person rather than what they said they wanted.
Definitely. Yeah, I've seen that happen as well, where kind of in the proposal, it's not a case of here's your start goal and here's your end goal. It's more of this is the kind of almost lifestyle that comes with making this business decision.
Yeah.
Which is such a forward-thinking way to do business now, and I think definitely given everything that's gone on in 2020 is where people's mindset is at. Is it's more about a happier life and what they can do in their business to make that happen. And I definitely think the empathy side of it is something that women can bring to the table really well.
Yeah. And teach the men in the business about it.
Yeah. Or just allow it to be a space where men feel like they can, because the women are. Because a lot of the time, that men it's just a case of they're worried that they can't necessarily have that approach, whereas the women taking charge and going, actually, this approach is ace and it's working. Go for it. The same way in reverse, where there'll be different parts where men can do that with women.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, there's a famous quote, something along the lines of, it's not what you see or what you show you can do, it's how you make people feel.
Yeah.
And if you can show that you care early doors, the difference, it doesn't matter whether that's marketing, accounting, solicitors, whatever, garden designers, if you can show that you buy into that person's requirements and what they really want, you've not just got a customer for life, but probably a friend for life, or however it's a completely different approach to this is what you asked for, this is what we'll deliver.
Yeah,
sort of.
100%, definitely.
Cool. All right. Have you got any questions for me as an employer of women?
I would think. Is there, for you in terms of lines, is there anything where it would cross the line of inappropriate? So, for example, for a video, is there, and it was me that was coming, is there anything where you would go, oh, that's a bit of a grey area, we need to be careful?
Oh, yeah. We know what one of your traits is. Should we say it on the podcast?
Go for it.
It doesn't matter whether it's a blog, a video, or whatever. You'll somehow relate it to a penis. There'll just be some sort of double entendre or something in it. And I was like, that euphemism again. And you do it because it's funny, but you do it a lot. And as a bloke, that's quite uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah.
So but I also think if you're doing it, it's fine. If I was to do it, really weird. So, and if you're doing it off your own back, fine. If you're doing it because I've told you to make a euphemism in your video, not okay. And that's the line. I mean, I wouldn't say we're the most politically correct agency going. I'd like to think anyone here could say anything, and I know them well enough to know where it's come from, even if what they've said is wrong. And I'll tell them it was wrong. But we'll also know that I wouldn't like to think we employ bigots. But it is a really difficult one because the world changes so much all the time. And I feel like, I'm only 33, but I feel really old sometimes because I watch like an advert for women's clothing and I'll be like, bloody hell, they're not wearing very much. And then, like my wife, who's a bit more switched on than me to that kind of thing, will be like, oh, that's just what people wear now. That's not unusual. What, to work? Yeah, to work. Oh, right, okay. I need to educate myself. And that's kind of just, I have to change with it. And, there comes more challenges than just male and female situation. But I quite like it. I just find it interesting.
Definitely. And I think it comes back to being bold and like me and my euphemisms and stuff, but it's about having that freedom to not feel shameful or guilty, or it's just a case of, well, this is funny and it's funny and it's relevant. It's not like, it's kind of making jokes all over the place. It's just actually I can really make this back up cool content and it'll stick. And that should be rolled out across the industry. If you can make something memorable to people, even if it's off the cuff or a little bit, if it's relevant to what you're doing.
Fine. Awesome. And what makes it stick. Well, that was it. I saw, I was watching Would I Lie to You yesterday. Have you ever seen that? So Lee Mack on Would I Lie to You was explaining how he remembers the Teletubbies. And I think, roughly, it was Poe sounds a bit like Postbox, and Postboxes are red. Lala doesn't sound like yellow, but sounds more like yellow than any of the other Teletubbies. So therefore, Lala's the yellow one. Dipsy sounds a bit like Deep Blue Sea, which isn't green but could be. And Tinky Winky sounds like he's got his willy out. And therefore is purple. That's like ridiculous. But I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. What will make it stick? And I laughed so much yesterday. And it's an old episode anyway. I think I'd seen it before. But that will never leave me. What a week. And I already knew what colour the Teletubbies were. So.
But now it's just like, okay.
And that's kind of what we're doing with our marketing is we're putting lines in and questions that will make it stick, that aren't just right. Did you know that 72% of people on Facebook bluff?
Definitely. Because we want you to think about it. There's marketing advice left, right, and centre, but a good marketer will make you question why you've made that decision within your business and how that decision will drive you forward.
And exactly that.
And so having these kind of drips and drabs within our own content that makes you think I
could do that.
It's also good to have that.
Because not everybody's going to be on board with doing it our way. 100%. We're a fast growth, fast expansion company. We work with some relatively big names, and sometimes that isn't going to be comfortable for some people, which is fine because our content also shows people that it's we're a bit Marmite. You might not like our approach, and that's okay. There'll be people out there for you that will do it in a softer way. But just I think as an employer, one of our things that we try really hard to do, and it's a double-edged sword because you can end up on the wrong side of a bollocking, but is empower our staff to do it how they want to do it. There's a framework and a systems and processes, but it's like, right, you want to record a video, fine. You want to do a story for Instagram, fine. You want to go do a client catch up. Can you hear my stomach rumbling? It's absolutely outrageous. Fine.
Yeah.
And you do it your way to our brand values. But if it comes back and it doesn't fit our brand values or it's not usable, it's on you.
Yeah.
It's up to you to ask the questions and find the information out to get it right.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it takes longer that way.
Yeah.
But the outcome is better.
Yeah,
everyone learns more.
Yeah, because you have a much deeper understanding of it.
Yeah.
And before you make the bold call, you really think about it, because you think, well, if this comes back, actually, I'm going in guns fully loaded of actually this will work, and this is why it'll work, and this is why it's relevant.
Yeah.
So you're not just putting things out there to make people sweat or make people click. You're doing it because actually this is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And this is why it's really cool.
Yeah.
So it definitely works for the creative element of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you've got an interesting piece of information to share, or a good story to tell, often it's how you tell it is important.
Yeah.
And actually, a good story is only as good as how it's told.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, whether that's from your apprentice or from your managing director, they've got to be empowered to be able to get the most out of it.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Yeah.
Any more for any more?
The main thing I've genuinely seen, so there's a couple, I wrote it down only because I always forget, but there's a lady called Sunny Lenarduzzi and Amy Ladina, who I follow on YouTube, who do they started business and marketing, and they kind of do some lifestyle things, but mainly that. And Sunny especially, like, she talks about, she worked in corporates kind of all her life and then has gone off and done her own business now, and about taking that step. And she does a lot of things about kind of empowering and confidence. And the main kind of takeaway from theirs is you've got to go in and with the mentality of, what would you do if nobody was watching this content? What would you do if nobody was listening to this content? And you run with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Quite often it is a case of, well, what will they think, or how I will look on this. But every time you go in to write your blog post, record your video, or sell your product, no matter what your business is, you need to go in thinking, like, what would I do if nobody else was here? How would I present this?
What would be my preferred way of doing this to speak to my audience?
Yeah, exactly. And if I was watching this, would this be helpful to me? And that helped me loads, because I used to really worry, and it can be really easy to kind of go off and think for all of these different people and all these different factors, and by the time you've criticised your piece of work so much, you're like, I can't use it anymore, it's crap. And so you've got to go in with that mindset of, this will work and I'm going to just do it for me. And then you can look at it with that fresh pair of eyes of, is this helpful? And that helped me loads. So that'd probably be.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. If you've always got your audience in mind, but you block out everyone else, I think that is a strong approach to content.
Yeah.
Whether that's video, blogs, podcasts, PR, social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Nice one.
Thanks.
It's been good to chat.
Yeah.